We're going to make a simple frame-by-frame animation using Photoshop. I've got an artwork here for my client, and we're going to be turning this artwork into an animated, very simple animated banner advertisement, an online banner advertisement for a website. To make the animation, we're going to use a tool in Photoshop, a panel in Photoshop called the timeline. So we can see the timelines appeared here at the bottom of our screen. A bit of room here. And there's a button in the middle of the timeline here. You can see some control buttons up the top there, but they're all grayed out currently. And at the moment, we've got this button that says Create Frame Animation. If I twirl down that little option there, we've got the options between a video timeline and Create Frame Animation. We'll look at creating video timeline another time. Today we're going to use the Create Frame Animation option. Click on that button there. And that's created our frame-by-frame timeline. We can see over in the left-hand edge of the timeline, we've got one little frame, panel, and that's going to be the first frame in our animation. And what we want to do is add a series of frames, and the animation will kind of step through those frames or play those frames in sequence and give us our animation. For this particular animation, it's going to be really simple. All I want to do is kind of reveal the content of the ad over a few seconds, and then have that loop and repeat. You can see over in my layers panel, got all that content stacked up. Text, a URL. We've got a frame over the top, which is not going to animate. We've got a logo, our model, and the actual product. So we'll start with this empty frame, and then we'll reveal those elements frame by frame. Down the bottom here is where we kind of make adjustments to our animation. A few things are grayed out, there, but this option here is important as it creates a new frame or duplicates the previous frame. I was just having a little trouble there as the record button for this screencast is kind of in the way of that frame. Anyway, our duplicate button adds new frames to our animation, and each frame has a particular duration. So you can see here that our first frame is set to 0 seconds. I'm going to set it to maybe 1 second. So for 1 second, we're going to have this blank frame. Then I'm going to add a new frame, and I'm going to turn on one of our layers in our layers palette here. So maybe we'll reveal our model, and I'll make that reveal as these elements come on, make that kind of quick. So for 0.2 of a second, we're going to have our model revealed. And then I'm going to move through or move further in time and add some more of our elements to the page or to the animation. So we'll reveal that product for 0.2 of a second. I'm going to add another frame, reveal our text, then the URL, and finally our logo. And once we get to our logo, I'm going to let that hold for 2 seconds so that you can kind of read the animation or read the content. Now we have some playback controls here. So if I press play, we can see the animation sequence through our frames. Now that's pretty simple, but that's what I wanted to achieve. So I can go and fine-tune the timing of each frame if I want to. I can also decide whether I want my animation to play through once and then hold on that final frame, do that 3 times, or whether or not I want it to loop forever. In this instance, I'm going to leave it to loop forever. I can stop the playback there. This button here allows us to switch to video timeline, which we're not going to do at the moment. Another thing that we can do is tween these frames, so you can create kind of a bit of a crossfade between frames. So between frame 1 and frame 2, if I wanted to put some tweening in there, I can adjust the tween options. So I'm going to tween with the next frame, so between these 2 frames, and I'm going to add as many frames as I want. I'm just going to put 1 frame, and I'm going to tween these parameters. There's only opacity between these 2 frames, but if I had moved my layers around, I could tween between the position. But if I click OK, it's added a frame in there, and you can see that that frame is 50% opacity between these 2 frames. So it kind of adds a bit of smoothness. If I change the duration of that and play that through, you'll see that gives it a little bit of crossfade effect. So it's going to add size to our animation, but it can add a smoother kind of effect, smoother kind of playback. I'm not going to worry about that for this animation. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to export this to a GIF that can be played back in a browser. So let's go File, and we will save as. And I'm going to save this to the desktop, and I'm going to give it a name. Frame by frame animation sounds good, and I'm going to save that as a GIF. Pretty simple. Save that. Place the one I've already got on the desktop there. And I'm going to leave the palette at local. That's saves a palette of 256 colors as a library in the file, keeping the file pretty small. And I'm going to click OK. Let's have a look at the file that we have on the desktop. Oh, it must be frame by frame copy. And I'm going to drop that into the browser, and you'll see that the browser is actually going to play that GIF file for us. So GIFs are obviously excellent for web development and web projects, and you can add a little bit of animation into your GIFs for those kinds of projects.